Hello there! Welcome to my channel, both again and for the first time, possibly. My name is WeirdShady, and I do nonsense commentary for you at my very own risk of getting my tongue twisted and stuck on my somewhat fancy microphone. So, I'ma talk about Gladiator 2 now. If you haven't seen it, I will have to warn you. Spoiler talk ahead. Thank you very much for listening to me, and yes, thank you for now. Yes, now, the plot. Let's talk about it.
There was a dream that was Rome.
That is the idea that the story of the sequel of the epic Gladiator ponders upon, and on and on and on. 16 years after the end of the original movie, Gladiator 2 follows Lucius, the little boy from the original Gladiator, where he is all grown up and even looks like a completely different person, with a nationality that's known for potatoes, leprechauns, and Jacksepticeye. Lucius is heavily hiding somewhere in Numidia, using the name Hanno. He is conquered in battle by Pedro over here, and gets turned into a gladiator rather quickly, after Denzel Washington's Maximus buys him to fetch cash by brutal violence. Rather weird to use your money on a guy that likes to eat apes for breakfast, but I digress. Lucius, or Hanno as we know him as in the beginning, shows a big resentment for the Roman army and Rome itself. You learn that he was sent away from Rome straight after the death of Maximus, because he was the sole heir to the throne, and therefore a big target for anyone that wants a whiff of power. So at the age of 12, he had to clutch for his life to
endure and survive.
Excuse me?
But during the entire movie, he is a gladiator in captivity, but all the big players outside of the cage are trying to figure out who he is. Maximus is probably the biggest player of the bunch, playing chess while the others are playing checkers. He even gets to kill 2 freaking emperors in one movie, and very shortly wields that power himself, to some degree. In the end, Lucius does indeed do what's good for Rome, and all the gladiators that's forced to fight there. Because after the first Gladiator movie gave life to the idea that was
There was a dream that was Rome.
it happily sets up for the conclusion that
Rome is to be a republic again.
after Maximus's death. I know that historically that doesn't make sense, but these movies really does not follow history that well. But the sequel is re-questioning it, after finding out that Rome is in even worse shape by now after Commodus died. Now it's ruled by the emperor brothers Geta and Caracalla. They are not great emperors, and you can even see this as you look at all the citizens starving and begging for their lives. Rome as a city is its own character in this movie, which is actually kinda great. Anyway, Lucius stops using the name Hanno and starts a rebellion in the ring, that is, the Colosseum. Maximus kills the last emperor, yada yada yada, and runs away for his life, because he's not done cooking. Lucius catches up to him and kills him. Now, Rome is yet again ready for the dream that was Rome. I'm quite unsure what that means right now, but Lucius has some part of it, potentially. So, how is this movie? That's a rather hard question. There's good things about it, there are great things about it, and there's some bad things about it. The action, the acting, and the production in total are amazing! For the most part, but there's a few points and story beats that's rushed and not far from unfinished. To say it bluntly, the movie is a lot, but also lacking at the same time. What I mean by that is that there's too much fighting scenes, but too little key moments with the characters. We don't get to see any of them properly. There's also too many characters that don't really do much, and there's so many things happening. But there's also a lack of flushed out full reasons for characters to do what they want to do. The build-up for certain motivations and other happenings didn't get to be seen enough. I feel like they could have removed some of the 8 fights and perhaps show us more of what Lucius's life was like before the battle with the Romans occurred, and why he wants to avenge his wife. I mean, I get it, it's his wife, but we as the audience, we don't really get to know her. I mean, Or, for example, show more of the suggested struggles that both the emperors had with each other, or in general get to know more of the characters, so that we as the audience would actually care more about them. You know? Is that so hard? I mean, other than Maximus, I think my favorite character in this movie would probably be that of the former gladiator turned nurse, Robbie. That's because he's probably the only character in the movie that we really get to know anything about. But Maximus does get plenty to do, so he's interesting in that way. So I feel like this movie has way more need of between-the-line reading, and that is something you can't do properly without seeing the movie multiple times. I kind of hope that all these problems can be fixed with an extended cut where they would and could bring more scenes that focus on the key moments and bonding time with all these characters. But Master Ridley doesn't want an extended cut, so I guess we can't really have nice things. I mean, in my opinion, the movie could go from a 7 to a 9 with just this idea for an extended cut. Ridley, please call me. I will tell you what to do, you know? After the second viewing of this movie, I didn't really have much problem with the movie as I did the first time. I didn't focus as much on the glorified connections from the original Gladiator and the somewhat jarring retcon that was the parental rights of Maximus being Lucius's father all of a sudden. I need to talk about this point because Maximus being Lucius's father is something that has been bothering me for quite some time. I can kinda guess why they did it, because there has been a lot of speculation the last 24 somewhat years on whether Maximus was Lucius's father or not, and I can imagine it being hella tempting for the writers to just appease this theory. But I don't really like it! Ridley, please, I don't! I believe that it would have been better if Lucius was deeply inspired or looked up to Maximus as a hero, like he originally did in the first Gladiator. Come on! But there could be something that makes it make more sense, I guess. Just bear with me, please. I have had a thought for the first time ever, just to try and save it. In the original Gladiator, we get hints and vibes that Maximus and Lucilla used to be an item in one way or the other. Perhaps they smashed vigorously, but I refuse to believe that Maximus would cheat on his wife with Lucilla. It's simply not in his character. So therefore, I believe that Maximus and Lucilla used to Netflix and chill at some point, but it didn't last, because something came up. This saddened Maximus, but he moved on, and then he met his wife somewhat shortly after, without knowing that Lucilla was ever pregnant. And he also thought that it was really Lucilla's husband's child, you know? The second movie makes it seem as if Maximus knew about it though, so that's my theory down the drain. In a way, kind of. Because they changed Maximus's last words from the ending of the first. Ish. Maximus's final words is that he tells Lucilla that Lucius is safe, because she raved on and on about that he wasn't, with Commodus still alive. At the end, Commodus dies, and Maximus has freed Lucius. But in the second movie, they made a choice to change his statement into a question? No, not good. I have seen the ending a bunch of times. I have even double-checked, triple-checked, and checked even more times beyond reason, even in different languages, after seeing the sequel twice in cinemas, because I needed to figure it out. This movie kind of started to make me doubt myself a tiny bit. But I can honest to God say, Maximus does not ask. Speaking of Maximus, before this movie came out, I was really afraid that Lucius would turn into a carbon copy of Maximus. Since it's a similar role, it's a similar premise, as Lucius will take the role that bears the said titular name of the movie. I can honestly say that he's not. There are similarities for certain, but he does indeed feel like his own character. For example, Lucius does the dirt-to-hand move, just like Maximus, but not in the same way. Lucius only used it once for a very practical use as well, to haze the rhino's sight when it was charging towards the wall. and at the end where he wanted to feel closer to Maximus, seeking answers for what to do next. After Lucius's wife dies, you also get to see the afterlife that this movie is showing from Lucius's side. I have heard a few complaints here and there that it's not shown in the same way as the afterlife in the original movie, with the grainy fields of glory and all that, but from what I understand of it, the afterlife can be seen as a visual representation of how the characters see it themselves. The Roman/Greek afterlife does indeed include different planes of lifing in the after, you know? So my guess would be that Lucius presented the afterlife by his own vision of what that looks like, and that he is on another path than what Maximus was. So he sees another part of the afterlife because of that. But it's also a nightmare of sorts, as it's hinted at later in the movie. Lucius's character arc is also quite different, as he is opening up for the title he actually has, as the Prince of Rome, something that he actively tries to get away from, until he accepts it at the end of the movie, after he's done with his temper tantrum. Ooh, that's another difference. Lucius is freaking mad, bro! He has anger issues that would put the smallest of doggos to shame. Speaking of doggos, we can clearly see that Lucius is pretty good at fighting, and the way that he fights is more like a rabid dog, trying his best to survive. Unlike Maximus's way of fighting, which has more finesse to it, since he's been in the army and all that. Another point I can add is that this movie is so happy to give shoutouts like crazy. There's too many name droppings, bro. There's simply too many. Both to Marcus Aurelius and Maximus, since they gathered somewhat around 30 name drops between themselves combined. I get it. Marcus Aurelius is Lucius's grandfather, plus there was a dream that was Rome, yada yada yada, and Maximus is somehow Lucius's father. But come on! We all know his name by now, and if you don't for some reason, you absolutely will now. Not only have I seen Gladiator 2 twice in the cinemas, but I have also done a bunch of research myself. I read a lot of articles, I have seen a lot of reviews. Some are positive, some are bad, some are outright ridiculous. No names given, of course, but bro, I have stated before that Maximus as a character has been an inspiration for me in some way, that I see him as a role model. But some on the internet may take Maximus's actions and doings as a sign of some kind of alpha male attitude and binds that with toxic masculinity as if it would have been a good thing. I don't understand that at all. I mean, I can vouch for that, since after seeing this movie, I just feel like I want to become the alpha male I am supposed to be. But of course, I'm too damn shy and sweet, and not to mention way too cute, to be, you know, like Andrew Tate over here. Oh, well, that was meant as a joke. Anyway, I have seen Gladiator so many times, and I don't see Maximus in that way at all. But anyway, to continue with my point, in the video, I heard a lot of things that pointed to the fact that the person had watched the movie, but hadn't necessarily seen the movie. There were so many points that was not based on the proper facts that the movie actually presented. But the biggest crime, except for all the hate towards women in movies, was that there was a bunch of talk about Pedro Pascal's Justus Acacius being a bad man, but praises Maximus for the same qualities that Acacius represents. These qualities, so far from what I have gathered, Acacius and Maximus are downright the same character, only one more fleshed out than the other. Acacius is literally used in the movie as a reminder for Lucius about how Maximus, his own biggest hero as a child, was as a person, and Acacius shows that. So therefore, Lucius changed his mind about killing Acacius. So how can you call Acacius bad, but Maximus good, when they're simply the same character, basically, you know? No, bad. I don't agree, no. But yes, that's all I had to say about that. Wait, I have one more thing before I wrap this up. Presenting to you...
Fun Facts with Shady.
Did you know that Paul Mescal, who plays Lucius, got the role partly because Ridley Scott binge-watched the series Normal People for hours upon hours and realized that Paul's nose is somewhat similar to that of Richard Harris, who plays Lucius's grandfather in the first movie, Marcus Aurelius. So I suppose that helped him land the role quite splendidly. The rhino fight was actually an idea that Ridley Scott had for the first movie, but the technology was super limited and the potential for using a real rhino was also indeed quite slim. Denzel Washington says that he kissed Pedro Pascal on the forehead, was so nervous if Ridley Scott actually liked it, so he bluntly asked, and Ridley answered, "I'm afraid I did." But Denzel also kissed and killed another same-sex character in the movie, but says that it got cut out of the movie because he thinks they got chicken. Ridley Scott denies this ever happening though. Mai Kalamaui, sorry if I mispronounced that name, the actress from the Moon Knight series, was supposedly going to have a big role in the movie, but all her scenes were cut out. I don't think there's any info about why just yet, but it's most likely because of the lack of time. But you can supposedly see her in the background somewhere in the movie without any speaking lines. Okay, nice. Could have gotten more, but time is of the essence, I suppose. So, in my opinion, we didn't really, necessarily, need this movie, but I feel like it was nice to see more of this world again. I feel like it's a special charm to see a large-scale representation of the Roman Empire and what it's like to see it from an outsider's perspective. So I'm glad we got it, for better or worse. But it's far from a perfect movie, and also not a perfect story in total. So, my question for you guys is... did you think that this sequel needed to be made? Were you entertained? Or could you have easily lived out the rest of your lives without watching it in the first place? That's all I had for today. Farewell for now.